The following may cause trigger warnings. These are stories told by other individuals, so I'm reading these off in first person. I highly recommend listening to these with headphones on for the best experience. If you find yourself listening to my videos often, then please consider subscribing. Now let's dive into the first story. I still get the creeps when telling this story. About 9 months ago, at the end of July, my family and I went on vacation to a spot in Virginia. We've been going to the same spot for 5 years straight. It was the middle of the night when I woke up to this tapping at the window across from the bed me and my brother were sharing. The room was decently big, with the bed pushed against the wall in the center of the room, and 2 smaller closets to the left on either end of the wall. A window was next to the closet in the far left corner of the room from the bed, with a TV beside it. Before I went to bed that night, I had turned on light rain sounds on the TV, and so it was playing queasily in the background while I sat up in bed, tired and weary. The knocking turned into loud thumps that made my heart race and my palms sweaty. By the sound of it, I could have sworn someone, or something, was standing outside the window, pounding on the window, which wasn't unreasonable considering the room was on the first floor near the entrance of the building. Looking at the alarm clock on my bedside nightstand, I realized it was very unreasonable. It was 3:15, which of course it was. Why wouldn't I wake up at the witching hour with tapping on the window and this utter dread filling my stomach? I don't understand how I missed it, because she was standing right next to it. Beside the window, or rather a little in front of it, was a girl with long, dripping wet black hair cascading down her face and body, basically hiding all of her from how long it was. She was wearing this worn-out white dress that ended on the floor. I couldn't see any limbs at all. She reminded me of that girl from The Ring, just less TV-like and real. For a good 10 seconds, I kind of just stared at her, waiting and watching, praying that this was some sick nightmare that I was about to wake up from. The panic hadn't yet set in, either. When I realized she wasn't moving or doing anything, I slid under the covers, biting back the tears of fear. I was 14 then, not young, but not old either, so the fear was pretty reasonable. After taking a few deep breaths and encouraging myself to look again, she was gone. She just vanished. The tapping on the window hadn't ceased. If anything, it got a bit louder. It also started raining after a few minutes of me just sitting there, staring at the spot where the girl once stood. I woke my bear of a brother up, almost crying from how scared I was. I told him what I saw, shaking as I did so. He kind of just nodded, pretty much still asleep. Now, he isn't much younger than me, being 12 at the time, but he was pretty useless as I complained about the tapping on the window. He told me to wake Mom and whine to her. I told him I wouldn't, so annoyed, he begged me to just turn up the TV and go back to sleep. I did, and to this day the memory of that girl standing by that window is burned into my mind. And to think I will be in that room again this year reminds me of the fear I had that night. In the 80s, my aunt moved to Berlin from a small town in the Northwest. I went to see her with Mom after Dad had left us. Mom's sister lived in a housing block. It was awesome. The apartment was on the 14th floor. The houses I'd set foot into until then had had 2 stories at most. I got along with most of the block kids. Many of them were brown-skinned and black-haired, unlike anybody in my school. We were playing soccer with a tennis ball when I had to pee. I said I'd be back. Aisha said, "Cool, but don't use the elevator to go up." I asked why not. Aisha said a junkie named Martin had overdosed in there and was now haunting it. I said sure and grinned, too proud to admit I had no idea what a junkie was. Aisha said if you go for more than a few floors, you smell Martin's pissed pants at some point. You turn around, then he'll be standing right behind you. I said it smells of pee in there anyway. So I went into the house and toward the elevator. I felt Aisha's and the other kids' eyes piercing my back from the entrance. If I'd taken the stairs then, they'd have made fun of me for the rest of my stay. That was almost a week, as good as eternal torment when you're 7. I waved at Aisha as the elevator door closed. The house wasn't new, and neither was the elevator. The cabin made sounds like a very old person, only as a machine. 2, 3, 4, 5, everything fine. 6, 7, 8, 9. Sounds got worse. 10, 11. The stop was so sudden I stumbled and fell. I got up and pressed 14 again and again. Nothing. It got stuck. I switched to the emergency button. Behind me, I heard breathing. I didn't dare to turn around. I smelled peed pants. Still, I pressed the emergency button. Nobody answered. Again? A voice asked. I screamed and turned around. Martin looked haggard, unwashed and pale, sunken eyes. "Leave me alone," I cried. "Leave me alone," he mocked me. His teeth lay in ruins. I turned around to push the button again. It had changed colors. The whole inside of the elevator suddenly looked different. I thought I was going insane from fear. The door opened, and there was a girl, a woman. Aisha? She spoke into some little thing like it was a phone, told it how after all this time, the elevator was still giving her the creeps. Then she went for the stairs. "You're so annoying when you forget," Martin said. "It had nothing to do with me. It was this pile of shit plus property management saving too much for too long on maintenance." Down you went. 11 stories. And here we are, you and I. Care for a shot? I shook my head, eyes fixed on the stairs. Does going ahead with my shitty tall man prank make me an even shittier husband? Maybe. But see, Emma was always gullible, stupidly so. It was one of the things I loved most about her, honestly. We met while working part-time at a local cinema, and there we were, sweeping up leftover popcorn, when she said, "What's this?" In her right hand, there was a tool belt. The projector had probably malfunctioned, and some repairman forgot his equipment. As a joke, I said, "Didn't you know a construction worker died when they were building this place?" From that moment on, she wouldn't set foot inside Screen 6. Didn't want to risk bumping into a ghost, you see. I thought it was cute, and just a few weeks later, my girlfriend ghosted me. So I asked Emma if she'd like to grab a coffee sometime. Rather than directly tell her about the urban legend, I left some reading material scattered around, and when she suggested a different location for the camping trip, all while doing a terrible job of masking her anxiety, I knew it was game on. In between a scattering of skeletal trees, I set up our tent. Oh sure, Emma begged me to find a better spot, but at the same time, the soles of her feet were raw slabs of beef from the 20-mile hike, so she eventually relented. After we tucked into a pot of beef stew, we turned in for the night. Knowing the first sudden noise would spook her, I waited. Out of nowhere, she sat bolt upright in her sleeping bag. "What the fuck was that?" We listened as wind howled through the trees. I pretended a dry cramp seized my throat. "It's the tall man." She threw her arms around me, her eyes pooling with tears. "Make it stop, please." In a high, frightened voice, I said, "The legends say the only way is to confess our sins. What bad things have we done?" Unable to speak, she just lay there, trembling. Secretly rolling my eyes but outwardly maintaining the act, I said, "I'll go first. The last house I rented, I salted the garden because the landlord wouldn't return my deposit. And last month, I accidentally stole a Mars bar and didn't go back to pay for it." She took several deep, shuddery breaths. "I killed your college girlfriend, the one you were dating when we first met. I slit her throat and filled her backpack with rocks and dropped her off in the Blackstaff River." While I lay there, shocked, tree branches scraped together roughly. Emma squealed and quickly added, "And I took that intern out at your work too, the flirty one. I sliced her up and dumped the pieces in a landfill." Outside, the wind eased, and the forest went back to sleep. After 10 seconds of dead silence, Emma let out a sigh of relief and then pulled me in close. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you want to keep up with my weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe. If you want to support my channel, hit the thumbs up button as it helps push the video to new people. As always, I thank you all for being here, and if you are listening to me thus far, you are very much appreciated. I'll see you all next time.